Welcome to the Machinations of Muffins. This is our YouTube channel, and we are making rosemary bread today for dinner. So today we are making a white and whole wheat flour rosemary bread. It's a quick and easy bread that does not take a starter, so it's something that can be done in one day. Okay, so first we're going to take our warm water and pour that in. I have a helper today. Yeah. Pour the warm water in. I'm going to measure 2 tablespoons of honey. Okay, do that one too. Thank you. Yes. I know, you like bread, huh?
It is my bread.
It is your bread? Yeah, okay. Next we need 2 teaspoons of yeast. Okay, got that in. 1. And 2. Okay. Now we're going to add 3½ cups of flour. Okay, we're gonna make some room. Putting this up. Okay, ready?
That's here.
Put this on mix.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to let that mix until a dough starts to form. It's going to be a couple of minutes. Okay, I'm just going to use a scraper to scrape down the sides of the bowl as it's mixing carefully so that it pulls in the flour and dough that's stuck on the sides of the bowl.
What are you doing?
Just checking on the dough. Unlock this and open this up. So now our flour has come together. We've got a pretty good dough formed. It's not wet. And there's not much sticking to the bottom of the bowl. That's a nice cohesive dough.
Mommy, I had it.
Yeah, you can see. There we go. Yeah, we're going to scrape the bottom of the bowl.
Okay.
Now we're going to cover this
Okay.
and allow it to sit for about 20 minutes. This allows the structure of the gluten to better develop and gives us a better crumb for our finished bread. While we're letting our dough rest, I'm going to chop up the fresh rosemary that I got from our garden. You just need this gently chopped. There doesn't need to be anything precise about it. And then this will be ready to be folded into our bread dough. Because we're having this loaf with chicken tonight, I decided to add some garlic to our loaf. So I'm going to peel this fresh garlic that we have from our garden. So I'm just going to mince this up. Now this garlic is ready to mix in with our bread once it's done resting. All right, so we've allowed our dough to rest for 20 minutes. we're going to make a well in the middle of the dough, and we're going to put our rosemary in. And we're going to put a little bit of salt. About a teaspoon. I don't want to overload the salt. So now we're going to put this dough hook down, and we're going to mix on low to incorporate the rosemary into your bread dough. All right, so now that we have the rosemary mixed into the dough, we're going to take it out and bring the dough to a floured surface so that we can add in the garlic, so the garlic gets more evenly distributed. Okay, so we have moved our dough from our mixing bowl to a lightly floured surface. We're going to gently press the dough out into an oblong shape using our fingers, and you can also use the heel, the palm of your hand. You just want basically a big rectangle. You don't want to overwork the dough. Doesn't have to be too big. It's about a foot long. And now we're going to sprinkle our minced garlic in over top of our dough, breaking up any big pieces that we have. All right, now we're going to roll the dough like a log. There we go. Now we need a bowl to put this in. I'm just going to use my mixer bowl. I'm going to rinse it out and we'll put it back in. Okay, so I have rinsed out my mixing bowl, and now I'm just going to lightly spray it with some cooking spray. I have olive oil cooking spray. This is going to prevent the dough from sticking. And then we're going to take our log with the seam on the bottom. We're going to lay it in our bowl with the seam on the bottom, like so. And now we're going to cover it again and let it rise at room temperature for about an hour. All right, so it's been about half an hour since we put our dough in the bowl, and it has risen nicely. So we're going to uncover it, and gently we're going to fold it over on itself and turn the bowl, fold it over again, and press down. And one more time, we're going to fold it over and press down, and we're going to let this rise for another half hour. Cover it back up and let it go for another half hour. So now our dough has risen an extra half hour, and we're ready to move it onto our parchment paper. This recipe can be divided into 2 loaves, or you can make one big loaf. Today we're going to make one big loaf. If you want to make 2 loaves, this is the time where you divide your dough to make into two separate loaves. So we're going to put it onto our parchment paper. You want to flatten it slightly. Be careful not to over compress it because you're going to deflate it too much. But now we're going to roll it towards us like this to make an oblong loaf. Like this. Sticking a little to my parchment paper over here. So we're going to put it on our parchment paper like this, with the seam on the bottom underneath. And now we're going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it rise here on the parchment paper. I like to spray my plastic wrap with cooking spray so that the dough doesn't stick to it. Otherwise it becomes a sticky mess. So we're just going to reuse this plastic wrap from the bowl because it's about the right size. Now I'm just going to spray my plastic wrap. And you want to lay the plastic wrap spray side down on top of the bread so that the spray is touching the bread. This is just going to help it to prevent building a tougher crust while it rises. So you leave it spray side down, and we're just going to let this rise on the counter like this at room temperature, covered, for about an hour and a half. And this is a good time for you to turn on your oven. We're going to be baking at 450 degrees. If you have a baking stone or a pizza stone in your oven, this is a good time to turn on your oven so that your stone can get nice and hot before you put your parchment paper on. If you don't have a baking stone, you can always use a rimmed cookie sheet flipped over so that it's inverted, and that'll give you a firm, flat surface that you can bake on without having the baking stone. Our bread has now risen for about an hour and a half. So we've removed the plastic. We're taking a serrated knife. We're going to make some diagonal cuts across the top to allow the steam to come out when we're baking it. Just make a nice cut. The serrated knife is easier to cut the dough. Makes it easier to cut the dough. Okay, now we're going to sprinkle this with water so that we get a nice crunchy crust. Okay, we're going to sprinkle with water. If you have a spray bottle, you can use that. I'm just going to sprinkle water here like this. Okay, and we're going to put it in the oven for 15 minutes. And then we're going to reduce the oven temperature to 375. You can spray the loaf with water in the first 5 minutes, or you can put a oven safe bowl of water in the oven, and that will help to create the steam needed for a crusty loaf. I've now put my bowl in my oven, and I'm going to put my loaf of bread that's on my parchment paper into my oven on my baking stone. Slide this in here. Piece of steel is very handy for that. So you can see the bowl of water there, and we're going to bake it for 15 minutes at 450, and then we're going to turn it down to 375 after 15 minutes. So our timer has gone off for our bread. All right. And there you have it, our rosemary garlic artisan loaf. Enjoy!